Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, and welcome to the brand new episode of So Many Words. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, So Many Words is a series wherein we pick up interesting topics around money or career and have a free-willing discussion in order to get diverse perspectives. Hoping these perspectives will help you think better and take better decisions in life. This is Pinkesh Dhimar. I lead brand marketing at CoinSwitch, and I'm back yet again with another important topic. What makes a better career choice? Is it working at a startup or is it working at an established company? Basically, we are going to have a discussion around startups versus established companies today. I'm sure those of you who have worked with established companies for a very long time, somewhere down the line, at some point, you would have wondered, should you join a startup and vice versa? Because why not? Grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. So today, in order to help you decide which side the grass is actually greener, we thought of bringing together a diverse panel who have been on both the sides of fences. With that, let me introduce you to our today's panel. We have Abhishek Rao with us. He is Senior Manager Brand Marketing at CoinSwitch, and he is the youngest panel member today. Then we have Devam. He is the Director of Strategy at CoinSwitch and works very closely with our CEO. He's not the oldest, but definitely a guy with a lot of wisdom in whatever he says. And I'm very excited to have him. Last but not the least, we have our very own Brajesh Upadhyay. He is the director of technology. And out of all of us here today, he is the one who has spent longest time at CoinSwitch. And by the way, he is also the coolest geek I have come across at CoinSwitch. So welcome, folks. Welcome to our today's episode.
Thank you,
Probably
Pinkesh.
you told me the oldest also.
Someone who has spent the longest time. I kind of guess it's going to come up.
Longest
Yeah.
time on earth also.
Great, great, great. Guys, so I have just one request. Let us have a very unfiltered discussion so that our audiences can get a very honest opinion about how each one of us have felt working at two different types of companies, right? So with that, let me just jump right into my first question. All of you have worked at established companies. Tell me, what did you like the most and dislike the most working there?
So I'll go first. I think I started my career with a startup in 2013. It goes by the name Flipkart. Then did my MBA, went on to work at McKinsey for 6 years, and here I am back to a startup. I think in established companies, I never had to worry about my growth. I think that is one good thing. The growth path is sorted. You just do your job. And there's a flip side to it. I think it also makes you a little dumb. So you're not thinking, you're not innovating. And these two sides of the coin, I think, are very closely knit. That's the good and bad for me in established companies.
Devam, I'm just going to double click on something that you just said. You said
Yeah.
the growth path is already set, and you also
Yes.
said you feel that you are becoming little dumb because you are not, punching way beyond your weight. Uh,
Correct.
this gives a feeling that it is very close to how a government setup is, and I'm sure that is not what you wanted to convey. Can
Not
you just
not
elaborate? Yeah.
Not really. So government setup, with all due respect, comes with its own connotations. I don't want to get into that. The thing is that you become too comfortable. You know what's coming after 2 years. You know you have to do these three things. Sort your relationships with clients, do great work on a particular topic, and just move to the next level. Uh, in startups, the dynamic environment as well as the nature of the startup always forces you to think every day on your feet, so to
Right,
say.
right, right.
I think that is a skill. I would, while it is survival for the startup, but that is a skill very, very important, that I feel in the long run, which
Mhm,
is difficult to cultivate, possible but difficult to cultivate in established companies.
mhm,
So
mhm.
the reset and go forward mindset, thinking every day about your work, I think is something that I missed while I was at an established company.
Got it, got it,
So
got
there's
it.
this one thing that Devam said, right? There's a sort of comfort that comes with scale, right? The sort of comfort that comes when you have a lot of resources. So you can throw money at the problem, and 50% of it will be solved, right? If you throw scale and distribution at a problem, 100% of the problems can be solved, right? Like as long as you have a decent product, taking it to the market is not that difficult. So let's say, for example, when I was working at Airtel, so you have a base of 300 million, right? So even if you are able to get 1% adoption on the worst of the product, it's still 3-4 million, right? And nobody will say, if you're saying getting 3-4 million people on a product, it's a failure, right? So that comfort that comes when you have such money, such resources, such scale, is, I think, something that no startup can match, right? It's just impossible. The way a startup works is, you don't have a big brand, you don't have a distribution setup, you don't have a lot of resources. And I think what works best for most people in startup is like the optimism and the, sense of, I'll do it, whatever be the case, I'll do it, I'll thrive in this chaos, I'll ensure whatever I need to deliver for my customer, I'll get it done in spite of whatever be the case, right? And I think that is one thing that I enjoy, you know, coming to a startup versus what I had, at a traditional company.
So Pinkesh, the what Abhishek and I are saying, the summary is too much comfort. The second half of the word changes to complacency.
Yeah. True.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Right.
from an engineering lens, I think the other part, which the comfort part and the scale part, which Abhishek talked about, I think it's from an engineering lens, working with a big company is also gives that pride that okay, your code touched million customers, and that's scalability, and that's what I think an engineer always looks for.
Mm.
The distributed systems, and to meet that scale, there is a specific engineering patterns which needs to be made, and I think from an engineer, I think it looks pretty good, and it's every engineer's dream to hit that part of it. But in big companies, as people talked about comfort and complacency, I think the ownership which you get to meet that kind of level, it's relatively very less. The kind of impact which you bring to the company at a bigger company as an engineer, it is very minute, or it doesn't impact the company's growth that much, even if you're not there, right?
Mm.
So for shifting to a startup, I think shifts the major part of it from a ownership perspective. Like
Mm.
you become the core of that company.
Mm.
Tech drives that company to a success. It becomes very important to do, but scalability definitely reduces, right? And the kind of resourcing, right? In big companies, nobody will care about how much cost are going into machines or infrastructure or AWS, right? But in startups, like even uh, I was telling casually, right? My the first startup which I immediately jumped to after that, like my CTO was pulling the plugs and putting the line cables, etc. He was the IT guy there, right? So like any IT issues, and I never realized working 6 years in big company that okay, that might be a potential issue in a startup, right? So those kind of things. So there are obviously perks of both sides, I think, and but the kind of ownership which you get in a startup, that's pretty amazing, and the impact which you bring, it's pretty amazing. But
Right.
at the cost of all these resources and all, you need to fight hard to make sure that within that limited resources, we still do are able to make that impact. The customer obsession, deliver results are pretty high here. That's
Brajesh,
my.
you said CTO also being the IT guy. I think
Hmm.
that is a line that has to be written in bold, italic, and underline, all three at the same time, because it portrays a very clear picture of how startups function. Guys, but I have a slightly different problem in life. I'll be very honest. All my life I have worked only with startups. Every time I go to my in-laws and I say this is the company I'm working for, they wonder ये लोग करते क्या है. So
Hmm.
most of the folks, people who are getting into the job for the very first time, they look for big names, right? Because with big names also comes certain kind of comfort, stability, also certain kind of appreciation that you can draw from people around you, that you work for XYZ company which is already very well known, right? So before you guys jumped into an established company, was this one of your criteria? If not, what else did you actually consider?
Like I actually have a very simple answer for this, right? Like uh, and I think this is the case with most people in India. They join their college, they do their engineering, they wait for the companies will come for their placement, or they do an MBA, and then they decide, okay, this is the package I'm getting, this is the company name, this is how much my expectation was, so I'll go there, right? And uh, I think 60-70% of the people who decide where to join in the start of their career is mostly what is available, not what I choose to do, right? Then you grow your skills, then you become better at what you want to do, what you're supposed to do, what you're good at. You figure it out, and then you decide, okay, now I can decide to choose whether I want to work for a big company or a small company. Of course, the preference is for a big company. When you're young, you always want good brands on your CV, right? That's how people think. That's what college students as well think as well, right? But I think that is also changing with the new, graduates. So a bunch of kids who come and talk to me, कि आपने कैसे decide किया? I said, this is how I decided. They have very clear idea. I want to do this in the next 5 years. I want to retire by 50. I want at least 50 crore in my account by that age, and this is my plan for it. I didn't have that clarity. I think I just went with the flow initially, but now that I think, uh, even if I had a choice, I would have gone for a big brand because it looked like it will help you much more in your career if you have good brands on your CV, and then you can take more risks.
Yeah.
So that is how I used to think.
Braj, just for the fun, I'm changing the sequence a little. Abhishek is the youngest panel member. ब्रज आपके जमाने में भी यही क्राइटेरिया था क्या?
नहीं, एक्चुअली मैं वही कह रहा था कि ड्यूरिंग माई पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम आई थिंक स्टार्टअप कल्चर इतना था ही नहीं. So we were all seeking big companies only, and obviously the pay was used to be in big companies only. Until
Yeah,
I think Flipkart was one of those companies I think which slowly changed the pay scale of startups in India. And slowly they started like the pay of startups also started matching with some of the big companies, and the comfort of like this ESOPs, right? ESOPs millionaires, right? All those concepts started coming in, and that's where startup became cool, and that happened according to me later half of my career, right? So earlier ऐसा नहीं होता था I think, and
Yeah,
पेरेंट्स से इतना पुश रहता है, as you said, right? कि like the preference is better to join a TCS, Infosys, and such brands which are family known brands, right, rather than a tech company which nobody knows about. So I think there was a lot of influence around those things.
Braj,
So
it absolutely refreshes my memory.
Hmm.
Startup word actually was coined and it came into vogue after 2013-14 onwards. Before that, it was naya company hai. We do not know whether they'll be able to sustain
yeah,
and thrive or not.
Hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. It's quite amazing to see how perspective changes as the industry also start becoming a little bit more popular.
I have only one line to add. So at that, like, the thing is ki I can best say it in Hindi. So when it was time for me to decide, I really wanted stability, right? So मुझे brand association से ज़्यादा I was looking for stability because I didn't want to be in a situation where I was not earning. देखो गरीबी में वो innovation, ownership और ESOP किसी काम के नहीं है. तो पहले अपनी सोचो, बाद में इनोवेशन करो.
I think it comes with that age factor also कि किस time पे आप कितना risk ले सकते हो, and
right.
there are points where you just don't want to listen to anything, no ownership and all that. You just need money, and that's another personal part of it which influences your decision with respect to startup and big company.
Great,
So
great. From there on, now all of you are at CoinSwitch, and CoinSwitch is a known startup in the ecosystem. Has your perspective towards startups changed after joining? So, just a little bit of before and after for our audiences to know uh, the popular perception versus what actually happens at startup.
So
Um,
I think popular perception would be 70-80% right, in the sense that yes, there is chaos. Yes, we are fighting every day. Yes, we are doing exciting things. But the thing is that in in the day to day life, I think I definitely feel more satisfied. That is one change, highlight, or something that I would like to say, because when I come in the morning, I have 10 things, 5 more things get added. I also have to tackle the previous day's 5 things. So I think it is dynamic, satisfying, yet I think it builds that muscle of ruthless prioritization every day to
Hmm.
survive, to grow, to reach the next level. And that's the journey that everyone loves, right? So take a sportsman, for example. They get happy every day by let's take a runner, right, by shaving off few microseconds in their 100-meter dash. So that's what we are doing basically.
Right. Devam, you said 70% part is correct, right? What is the
Yeah.
30% part which is incorrect? Perception versus reality.
I would say I think there has been like a lot of uh, you know uh, you know public speculation around governance. I think we all tend to paint everyone with the same brush. Not all startups, have had governance issues, or have some founder issues. Typically, the startups have been found with a vision, right, which definitely expands beyond money. So जो भी मनी के लिए जो चीज कर रहा होता है वो लाइफ में काफी आगे तक नहीं जाती. You do it for a vision. And
Right.
I think it pains me to see people painting all startups with one brush, that there are governance issues all around. I would say that is top of my mind at this point.
Yeah, very interesting perspective, Devam. What about you, Abhishek?
Okay,
Perception
so
versus reality.
I'll have a slightly different answer from what Devam said, and this is probably my perception, right? So, if you look at the whole bull market of 2020, 2021, 22, right, the whole VC funding boom, right, it led to a lot of FOMO. Like I could see articles around how early employees of Paytm made some 10 crore, 15 crore, or 15x, 100x on their early swaps. You hear stories about 100% hikes happening here and something amazing happening there, and there's so much glamour associated with becoming a unicorn. There's so much glamour associated with making early hustle, like joining companies, hustling through. I think that is something which is wrong, right? This is a great perception to have. But that's not the reality, right? And I think anybody who is joining a startup needs to understand that these are the positives that you see. You don't see the 100 like 10,000 hours of effort that each of these guys would have put to become an expert in that field, or the struggles that would have happened, on the hacks or the jugaad that people would have done to reach there, right? And that is something that I learned after joining, right? Like it's like the fact is, if you do something, if you write. So I'll give an example, right? We used to make campaigns at Airtel. We would have an agency who would be on retainer. You give them the brief, you get the final product, right? You can give a couple of feedback yahan wahan, but you can't really go against someone and say ki ye kharab hai. It will hurt their ego. You have to maintain their relationship. You can't really do much. All you're doing is handling the feedback from top and ensuring that the stakeholders are happy, right? Versus at a startup, you're writing the copy, you're writing the brief, you're writing you're making the whole plan, you're even designing to some level, right? And the fact is, when you do those things, there's an inherent happiness that you get, and
Hmm.
and probably that drives people to do it again, do it more, stay at the startup,
Yeah.
rather than the 100% hikes or the ESOPs or the IPO dreams. It's these small wins and small happiness which I learned is something that you should look for in a startup,
Yeah.
and I think that has helped me stay as well.
Right. So Rao, it is, the crux is you be frugal and yet do amazing stuff. That's what
Right.
motivates
So
you.
I remember there was like when WhatsApp was acquired by Facebook, there was a whole news ki there are 19 people or something, like a 19 member team has developed such a big thing, right? Which is used worldwide. And I used to think कि इतनी छोटी सी team कैसे बना सकती है? But like you realize after joining a startup that you need a few good people, a few good men, and that's it. Like that's all you need to build good products, good campaigns, good anything. Uh, so yeah, that's
Yeah.
my learning.
Great. Braj?
Yeah. So I'll say मतलब startups में in general एक मतलब एक survival instinct, एक fighting spirit, एक I'll say warrior attitude. It's there, it's needed. It lives day to day, and I think that's what, as Devam said, कि जब रात को जाते हैं तो it feels कि हाँ यार कुछ करा है, मतलब कुछ achieve किया है. That feeling is amazing. I think that's something which at least CoinSwitch has given me more, right? And that attitude of fighting and standing up for yourself, believing in yourself, and fighting hard to get that impact. And once that delight comes, right, when you like, it's a dedication to journey of dedication to delight, right? So you keep on dedicating yourself day to day, and that delight moment when a customer says that हाँ यार मतलब ये impact किया, ये positive हुआ, या numbers आए जो भी, I think that's the best part of it. And I think luckily, like, conscious, according to me, has given that spirit of fighting hard, surviving, and by taking a long term approach, as Devam said, I think by taking a long term approach, that कैसे इसको, like, we need to be here till the next 10 years, 20 years, and how still add value to people. So I think those kind of things which are generally perceived कि यार ये short game है, ये 1-2 साल ये कर दो 3 साल में ये हो जाएगा, series B, series C. I think those are mentality. If you think here for a long term, I think that really changes. The impact which you deliver really changes. And but I also want to say that there is a perception that मतलब एक perception है जो कि startups में fight होती है. मैं कहूँगा शायद वो reality भी है कि एक fighting है, ठीक है. But wo, if somebody should, I say this to people that if you like solving problems, then you will love it. And I think I've seen people succeed who have that spirit, who like solving problems, amazing in startups, right? So and that's something which I believe that,
Yeah,
that's a very warrior attitude, is
yeah.
I think what given me coins.
Great, great. Braj, तो मतलब ये this warrior attitude and all is right, and but it actually makes me wonder. Most of the people feel that startups sucks the life out of you. There is absolutely no work-life balance at startup. How true is it in the context of the larger startup world, and specifically in the context of CoinSwitch as well?
So I'll say work life balance, obviously there are companies. So when I joined my first startup and all that, it used to be very very hectic. Every weekend I used to stay up because tech is if you are in a product company, B2C company specifically, you need to support 24/7. So a system needs to be up and running, and you don't get time to scale those systems. You don't get time to actually stabilize that system, because startup is also about running fast and delivering faster results, right? So it was tough for sure. Like most of my initial 2 months weekends I was spending on calls and trying to fix things and all. But it gave me an opportunity to also build some innovative hack, so that the next month I was able to get away from it, right? So I think those opportunities which you get on how you can keep on streamlining that work which is causing a ad hocness in your life, if you understand that, and that is where problem solving is also about, all about. I think that keeps on getting refined. So when I started, even in Coinsus, I feel yes, there was a lot of issues. There were too many things to manage. The company was growing. Obviously, customer issues. You need to support. You need to support that scale, right? And there were a lot of things breaking. But with time, I think we were able to build a better systems. We were able to stabilize. And with time, I have seen a good graph of improvement in everybody's life, right? So I think that's what matters, and that's what the alignment is important. That once you know that there is a problem, and you are everybody is supporting you to help fix that problem, and once that problem is fixed, hopefully, like my idea is always you should get only new problems. Like one problem if you have faced, you keep on overcoming that and keep on getting new problems. That's when you're growing. And I think in Coinswitch I've seen that the problems have really changed across last more than 1.5 years since I have been here. So
Great, great, great. So burning the midnight oil becomes necessary at times, but over a
yeah.
period of time, that also helps you streamline your processes and come up with systems that do not require you to be available 24 bar 7.
Yeah.
I
Devam,
think
what about?
I think it is, yeah, it is just about, I think he explained it really well, right? If you solve problems well, you might have short term pain, but you will get a long term gain. मिडनाइट ऑयल के बाद जब 15 मिनट आपको स्ट्रक्चरली सॉल्व करना होता है ना, इफ यू इन्वेस्ट दैट टाइम यू विल नॉट बर्न द मिडनाइट ऑयल द नेक्स्ट टाइम. आई थिंक that is how I treat work life balance. अगर structurally आप solve करोगे, you will definitely reach a better state, and I can vouch for Brajesh's team at least that they are and actually continuously trying to reach a better state. I would totally agree with that. I think एक और चीज है which people talk about is aggression. I think you mentioned it earlier as well, right? And again, I would sort of index it on problem solving. Uh, a person who is a bad people manager, a lot of the times the reason is that the person is not a good problem solver. And if you're not in control, so you will try to take out aggression on others, try to tell them to do it in certain time, but not know how to do it yourself. So if you're a great problem solver, you can be like a bad people manager. But ideally, if you're a great problem solver, you should be in control, and that aggression should also go out of the way.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, you have anything to say on this?
Just one thing. So I think there is also this perception that established companies में काम नहीं होता है यार. ऐसा नहीं है. Like there have been times when I have started 3 o'clock to make briefs. I am sure Devam would have spent 16 hours days in McKinsey. Like and it's just about the culture of the company. I think it's more about which company you are in, what's the culture of that company, what's the temperament of the founders there, right? Those are the things which make a huge difference in the work-life balance scenario for even startups. And yes, there are problems. There are problems to be solved in every startup, right? But there would be times where you would have to work on those Saturdays and Sundays because there's nobody else to do it, right? You're the only person who's responsible for it. But there are also times where if the founders are good, if the culture is good, you'll have enough time to be with your family, spend time with your friends, go out. Like we have recharge days in our company, right? Like I don't think we had anything like that in Airtel, right? So I think it's more of a company culture, founders. It's a mixture of all of those things, along with being in a startup and being in a established company, rather than just like a black and white line. कि यहाँ पे सब ऐसा है,
Yeah,
वहाँ पे
yeah.
सब ऐसा
I would agree, Pinkesh. Don't construe this as that we always want to remain a startup in scale. In scale, we want to be an established company. In
Ah,
culture, we want to be a startup.
super, 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 super.
Just
So
to add to matlab, the fun fact, like still in all my career, the longest hour continuous which I've still worked was in a big company, right? So it's like continuous straight. So yeah, so
great,
I
great,
agreed
great.
with Abhishek that there's work in big companies also. It doesn't change. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have heard many good things about startup already from you guys. Now, after being in startup, specifically with Coinfish for a little while now, what are the things that you miss about the established company? I'm sure there must be many, many good things there as well, right?
I can go first on this.
Mm.
So, so if you look at all these established companies, right? Like you look at HUL, you look at PNG. These are companies which have survived for 100 years and across globe, across countries. And the one thing I think they have figured out well is how do you build people into leaders, right?
Mm.
If you look at HUL, it's considered like a CEO factory because your 15-year career plan is sorted. You'll start with sales, then you go into brand, and you go into different functions, then you become a people manager, and then you will have a mentor who will train each and every step so that you succeed. They are invested in your journey and your career. uh, I think starters don't have that luxury, right? That luxury of time, that luxury of having that you can spend so much amount of resources on one specific person. But I do miss that about established companies because there is a sense of, oh, this guy looks after me, he cares about me, okay, and that sense of, let's say, camaraderie, or that sense of care is something that you tend to miss when leave that ecosystem.
Abhishek, I have a slightly different perspective, and I want Braj and Devam also to chip in here.
Yeah,
I think the situation is little contradictory at startup. At startup, while there is nobody to constantly monitor and mentor you, but you are expected to learn things on your own. You are thrown into the
right,
water, and that is how you learn to swim, and you end up becoming a great swimmer. So from
right,
that perspective, uh, you would have heard a lot of folks who joined startup, spent 2 or 3 years, and they got promoted very, very fast, right? So a lot of people in my circle prefer working at startup because they know for sure the kind of capabilities that they bring to the table, and they also know the kind of dedication and hard work that they can put in, which can fast track their career, right? So on this, I wanted to know, Braj and Devam, what do you guys have to say?
I think fast track of career is a reality. A lot of us have also come in, expecting that, getting that, and like hoping for more. Uh, I would say, I mean, this reality only comes to life. So you are as good as your, last project or your last milestone. I always like to say that. And the moment you sort of stop making yourself useful, stop adding value, is where it ends, right? Whether you're at an established company or at a startup, there is more slack in an established company, sometimes, not at all, but sometimes to pick up, after you, to allow you to be a dead weight. In startups, I think rarely so. And it is because you for people who are motivated, अगर 3 महीने काम नहीं दोगे वैसे ही frustrate हो जाएंगे. If they're not able to add value, I think they'll realize it themselves. uh, yes, in Abhishek's words, कोई माई बाप नहीं है, but customer ही माई बाप है. That's
Right.
the most
Hmm.
live feedback that you always get.
Yeah. So feedback loop is very, very short here. It doesn't come via 10 different people. Customer tells
Yes.
you on your face and you have to
And
rebuild or rebuild.
Yeah.
just like your episode, it is unfiltered. When the customers are angry, the numbers start showing.
I think startups do gives you that practical learning, and like you are thrown into so many situations which you would have never seen or been part of in a big company, right? There are so many people to handle those situations, and you don't even realize कि यार ये भी मुझे ही देखना पड़ेगा क्या, मतलब मुझे ही ये सेट ठीक करना है, right? Like from laptop to internet to basic things, setups of so many things which comes as a luxury in big companies. You don't even realize everything is set up for you, right? So you
Yeah.
don't even know how why you are able to perform better or worse, like, because there's a whole ecosystem which is like you don't even know about, and neither we are grateful about. So there are few things which when I came to startup I realized I should be grateful about in the big companies, right? So
Yeah.
there are things like that. I think mentorship, like from a code perspective as an engineer, I'll talk about that. uh, we do like things do get delivered to customer, those are functionally correct, but there's a way to do it. That's what you learn in big companies, because they have done it for across many years, and they have seen those, they have spent that time with that same code for many years to see every possibility of bugs, right? And there's a way, there's patterns to write. In startups I see that that is one of the big things which is lacking. And to coach and onboard those people, there are very less people
Hmm.
who are able to give that time for mentorship and onboarding. I think that's one of the issues which I see. And I think nobody brought it up, but one thing which I missed definitely is the RSUs of big companies, right? So that's paper money versus actual traded. So I think that's something which is definitely a difference.
Yeah. And I have a feeling you guys are actually sounding and being very studious at this point in time. Nobody spoke about the perks, the five-star hotels, lavish dinners,
Oh
parties,
yes.
jet miles. You don't
देखो
miss
देखो
that
Yeah.
in
पिंकेश
the business.
पिंकेश बहुत सिंपल है. When you start associating with the brand, when you start associating with these perks ना, you're not being yourself. तो
Hmm.
आप अपनी बड़ी कंपनी के नाम से 2 साल 5 साल 10 साल जाने जा सकते हो, बट उसके बाद आपके नाम से भी वो कंपनी जानी चाहिए. That is the dream that we all have.
Mm.
Good stuff, Devam.
Nice,
Superb,
nice one
superb,
there.
superb. So, so with that, sometimes I also wonder, are startup places only for people at a certain life stage? What do you guys think? Generally you end up seeing a lot of young folks only at startups. Are startups not suitable for those who are married, have kids, and slightly, probably have spent more than a decade or decade and a half into their career journey?
I think I would say it is a function of two variables, your hunger and risk appetite. तो मेरा हंगर entrepreneur जितना नहीं है शायद, थोड़ा सा कम है at this point of time, and risk taking भी थोड़ा कम है. I'm at that stage where I can actually take risk, but still I'm choosing to be in the middle path. So I would say I'm somewhere there. For entrepreneurs, the hunger and risk taking is there, that without any stability they can also jump into it. So I think it is to each his or her own. And for me, I think it fit the bill to spend like 5 6 years, get out of garibi, and like just move on.
Yeah, well, I'll agree. I think the two words hunger and risk appetite, I think that's what decide. I've seen every kind of person, like person who like recently had like marriage, family, and all that, and still went to chose a startup, right? Because of I think the background and all that, and still the hunger. They know that. And today, I think today's world, Pinkish, I think things have changed a lot, right? Like the risk factor now working in a startup is relatively very less. There are a lot many opportunities nowadays, right? And most of the startups are like there's enough funding concepts which has come up, and all this money problem is not there. So I believe now people feel way more comfortable, and the risk factor has relatively reduced in the market, and now it's more about hunger. Right. It's more driven around how people want to do that, but I've seen every kind of people. It do plays a role, but it is very individualistic for that person. It doesn't matter, like it's very different for different kind of people. I've seen every kind of people
Right.
at different stages to be in startup. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Braj and Devam, even in this kind of environment, which is slightly tricky from the security and safety standpoint, do you still feel, uh, startup are a right option even for those who are probably at a slightly different stage in their life?
I would say yes, Pinkesh. I mean, like your work life of 35 years, मतलब treat this as your portfolio, investment portfolio. अभी
Hmm.
थोड़ा stability, थोड़ा aggression, थोड़ा aggressiveness, ये सब चाहिए. So startup is maybe that kicker that will push your portfolio higher in your work life, and an established company is something which will give you stability. So treat it like that. Some people have the appetite that they're okay with lower returns and will work in stable company throughout. That works for them. And some people are just very very aggressive. They'll work in startups and hope for that one outsized bet to take off. So work is equal to your investment portfolio. Diversification is the name of the game.
Superb, superb, superb.
So, but
Rao,
it's like
anything?
3 months. I'll
I
just add to it,
think
like 3 months, 4 months of startup experience is equivalent to a 1 year experience of a big company. So
Right,
if
right.
you're obviously gaining much more in that smaller point of time with respect to your portfolio, as Devam said. So mm.
age is just a number, Pinkesh. It's
Great,
the
great, great.
temperament that matters, I think. Yeah.
Great. So, on that note, we have reached the end of our today's episode. For me, the key takeaway is uh, pros and cons are definitely there with both established companies as well as startups. You got to know what are you seeking out of your career at this point in time, and accordingly decide what is right for you out of these two options. Once you have decided on what you want to put your bet on, it will become very easy for you to accept both pros and cons and put your 100% of efforts and energy into growing at whatever you are doing, right? So with that, we have come to the end of our today's episode. We are going to be back very soon. I would like to thank Devam, Braj, and Abhishek, all three of you, for your insightful pointers, and I'm very happy that you were pretty much unfiltered while talking about your respective experiences. So folks, those of you who haven't started following yet on our LinkedIn, please go and press that follow button. We'll be back with a new episode very soon. Thanks a lot everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Bye.
Pinkesh. Bye
Bye.
bye.